My name is Nelson Morrow, and I want you to sit down before you hear what my own parents did to me, because if you're standing, this might knock you off your feet. It was a Tuesday. January. Cold enough that the heating in my apartment had been on since October. I'd just gotten home from my third ER visit in 6 weeks. The diagnosis: a ruptured disc pressing against my spinal nerve. Surgery required. Cost: $5,000 out of pocket after my barely there insurance. The kind of number that sounds manageable until you're 29, working a warehouse job that just cut your hours, and every single step feels like someone's driving a screwdriver into your lower back. I called my parents from the hospital parking lot. Mom answered on the second ring. "Nelson. You okay, baby?" I told her everything: the diagnosis, the surgeon's timeline, the fact that waiting too long could mean permanent nerve damage. Real damage. The kind that doesn't heal. The phone went quiet. Then she said, "Let me talk to your father." I sat in that car for 22 minutes. When she called back, her voice had shifted, softer, careful, the tone she uses when she's about to disappoint you and doesn't want to feel bad about it. "Baby, we just don't have it right now. Money's really tight." I believed her. That was my first mistake. I said okay. I thanked her. I hung up and sat in the dark, trying to figure out payment plans for surgery on a body that might be giving out at 29. I didn't know yet what tight actually meant in this family. I was about to find out. 3 weeks after that phone call, I'm at my parents' house for Sunday dinner, something I still did out of habit, even when I should have known better. My back was wrapped, every step deliberate. I walked in and there was Deja, my older sister, the golden one, standing at the kitchen island, phone in hand, showing Mom something on the screen with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her face. "Nelson, come look at this venue," she shrieked. I walked over, slowly. On her screen was a sprawling estate in Buckhead, Georgia, chandeliers like frozen waterfalls, ivory tablecloths, gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. "Tyler proposed last night," Mom gushed, grabbing my arm. "We're doing it right, Nelson. Everything first class." I looked at Deja. She looked at me. And she had the nerve to say, "You're gonna be there, right? I need my little brother at my wedding." I forced a smile. "Yeah, of course." But something cold was already settling in my chest. That dinner, my father, Raymond Morrow, a man of few words and selective memory, pulled out his reading glasses and sat down with a legal pad. Right there at the table. Started talking numbers. Venue deposit. Catering minimums. Floral arrangements. "We're putting in 80, Dad said. Tyler's people are matching." I almost choked on my food. $80,000. My parents were committing $80,000 to a wedding. While I had a surgical consult scheduled for Friday that I was already planning to cancel because I couldn't afford it. I didn't say a word that night. I drove home in silence, my back screaming, my mind louder. Something in me cracked open. And it wasn't my spine. I went back to that Sunday dinner moment 100 times, replaying it, looking for the angle I missed. Because surely, I misunderstood something. So I called my Aunt Renee, my mother's older sister, the one person in this family who has never learned how to lie with a straight face. "Aunt Renee," I said, "tell me straight. Do Mom and Dad actually have money?" She went quiet for too long. "Nelson, just tell me." She exhaled. "Baby, your daddy got a settlement from that forklift accident lawsuit 2 years ago. Came in right around tax season. I don't know the exact number, but your mama came to my house with a Louis Vuitton bag I know she didn't have before." I sat down on my kitchen floor. Right there on the linoleum. Back flaring, eyes burning. 2 years ago. My father had received a legal settlement. 2 years ago. And 6 months after that, I'd asked them to co-sign a small personal loan for a car when mine broke down. They told me they were stretched thin. I took the bus for 8 months. I thought about every birthday they said they couldn't do much. Every time I asked for help with a bill, or anything, and always got the same careful, rehearsed answer. We just don't have it right now. But they had it for Deja's venue deposit. They had it for catering minimums. They had it for a wedding that hadn't even been planned yet. I didn't cry. I wanted to. Instead I felt something sharpen inside me, clear and cold and quiet. I called my sister Brianna next. My younger sister, the one who stays out of family drama. She answered laughing about something. I told her what I'd found out. She stopped laughing. "Nelson," she whispered, "how much did you ask for?" 5,000. The silence that followed said everything she couldn't. I want you to understand something. I didn't go into that next conversation looking for a fight. I went in with a spreadsheet. I know how that sounds. But I needed facts, not feelings, because if I walked in with only hurt, they'd dismiss me as emotional. So I built a case. I had the ER bills, the surgical estimate, the diagnosis letter, the dates of every conversation where I was told money was tight. And I had Aunt Renee's confirmation about the settlement, which she gave me in writing via text. Bless her soul. I called my mother on a Wednesday evening and asked if I could come by that weekend. Just to talk. She said yes, made it sound warm, told me she'd make her banana pudding. Saturday came. Dad was in his recliner. Mom was in the kitchen. Deja was there too, unplanned, or so I thought. I sat down. Placed the folder on the coffee table. "I need to talk about the money," I said. Dad muted the TV. That alone told me he'd been expecting this. "I asked you for $5,000 for surgery." Surgery. Dad. Not a vacation. Not a business idea. My spine. Mom started, "Nelson, baby," we explained. "You told me you didn't have it." I slid the folder forward. "But you have 80,000 for Deja's wedding." The room became a different temperature. Deja looked away. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom said, very quietly, "That's different." Those two words. That's different. I'd prepared for excuses. I'd prepared for deflection. But hearing my own mother say, out loud, that her son's spine was different from her daughter's wedding reception, something in my chest just collapsed. I closed the folder. "Different how?" I asked. Nobody answered. What happened next, I did not see coming. And I've replayed it so many times it feels like a wound that keeps reopening. My father, Raymond Morrow, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who sat with me in the hospital when I had my tonsils removed at age 7, looked me dead in the face and said, "Deja's wedding is an investment in her future. Your medical situation is temporary." Temporary. I looked at the surgical report in the folder in front of him. The one that used phrases like progressive nerve compression and risk of permanent mobility impairment. Temporary. Deja didn't say a word. She sat on the couch scrolling her phone like we were discussing a grocery list. But here's the twist. The part that broke me in a completely different direction. My mother started crying. Not for me. I watched her face. The tears weren't for the son sitting there with a damaged spine and unpaid bills. They were for the tension. For the disruption to the narrative she'd built where everything was fine and her family was unified and Deja's wedding would be beautiful and Nelson would just figure it out. She was crying because I'd forced her to look at something ugly. And she was making that ugliness about her feelings. I stood up. Slowly, carefully, because my back wouldn't let me do anything fast. "I just needed to know where I stood," I said. "Now I do." I picked up my folder. "Don't worry about coming to the surgery," I said. "I'll handle it." I walked to the door. My father called after me, not to apologize. To tell me I was being dramatic. I drove home. I called my best friend Darius and told him everything. And Darius, steady, calm, never panics Darius, said, "Bro, we need to talk about what you're going to do next." Darius Lamont Cole has been my best friend since 9th grade. Played basketball together, survived the same neighborhood, watched each other grow up. He's a physical therapist now, which, given my condition, felt like divine timing. He came over that Sunday with food he cooked himself. Jerk chicken, rice and peas. The kind of meal that says I see you without saying a word. We sat at my small kitchen table and I laid everything out. The surgery cost. My parents' response. The wedding budget. The settlement I didn't know about. Darius listened without interrupting, which is a skill almost nobody has anymore. When I finished, he was quiet. Then, how bad is the back, for real? Surgeon said if I wait past 90 days, the nerve damage could be irreversible. I've already waited 40. He nodded slowly. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. Darius had a colleague, Dr. Simone Holt, a spinal surgeon at Emory. She ran a sliding scale program for patients in financial hardship. Not charity. Structured payment. Real care, real doctor, real outcome. I can get you in, Darius said. But Nelson, you gotta stop carrying this alone. Stop protecting them. I'm not protecting them. He gave me a look. You haven't told Brianna everything. You haven't told your grandmother. You haven't told anyone except me. That's protection, man. You're still trying to keep the peace. He was right. I hated that he was right. What about the wedding? I asked. Darius leaned back. What about it? Am I supposed to just show up? Watch them spend $180,000 on flowers and champagne while I'm on a payment plan for my spine? He looked at me steady. That, he said, is entirely up to you. I called Grandma Estelle on a Monday morning. 81 years old, sharp as broken glass, and the only person in the Morrow family who has ever said an uncomfortable truth without blinking. She picked up before the second ring. Nelson. Hey, Grandma. You sound like something's wrong. I told her everything. From the ER to the settlement to Saturday's confrontation. All of it. I didn't soften a single edge. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I'll carry for the rest of my life. Baby, your mother has always loved Deja like a mirror. Deja reflects back everything your mother wished she'd had. You reflect back something harder. You remind her of sacrifice. And some people can't love what reminds them of sacrifice. I didn't speak. Your father, she continued, is a man who was taught that the loudest need gets met. Deja has always been loud. You've always been quiet. And in this family, quiet got mistaken for fine. I had a surgical consult. Grandma. That's not quiet, that's a crisis. I know, baby. I know. A pause. How much do you need? Grandma. How much? The out-of-pocket after insurance is $4,200. Darius found a program that covers the rest. 3 days later, a Zelle notification hit my phone. $4,200. From Estelle Morrow. With a note. Get yourself right. You are not a second choice. I sat in my car and shook. Not from pain. From being seen. But the story doesn't end there. Because 2 days after that, Deja called me, frantic, voice pitched high with that particular frequency she uses when something hasn't gone her way. Nelson, I need you to be in my wedding party. Tyler's side has 6 groomsmen. I need to match. I held the phone for a long time before I answered. I told Deja I'd think about it. I know, that sounds weak. But I had a surgery date now. I had Dr. Simone Holt, who was direct and calm and spoke to me like a full human being. I had a plan. And I didn't want to blow anything up before I was standing on solid ground. Surgery was scheduled for a Thursday. Darius drove me. Grandma Estelle sent flowers to the surgical center, actual flowers, delivered before I even went under. My parents called the morning of. Mom's voice was bright and careful. We just wanted to say we're thinking of you. I said, thank you, and hung up. Clean. No anger. No drama. Because here's what nobody tells you about moments like this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply not give someone access to your wound. Not out of pettiness. Out of self-preservation. The surgery went well. Dr. Holt was extraordinary. I woke up in recovery, back still tender but the nerve pressure, for the first time in months, gone. Like a fist that had been clenching inside my spine had finally opened. Darius was in the waiting room. Of course he was. She said it went perfect, he told me. You'll need 6 weeks physical therapy, but Nelson, you're gonna be okay. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 6 months. But recovery gives you time to think. 6 weeks of slow walks and early bedtimes gives you nothing but space to process. And in that space, I kept coming back to one question. Deja's wedding was in 11 weeks. Was I going to stand at that altar beside a sister who sat on her phone while our parents told me my spine wasn't worth $5,000? The answer was forming. Slowly. Clearly. Here's the twist I didn't expect. The one that changed the entire shape of everything. 5 weeks into recovery, my younger sister Brianna called me, and she was crying. Not quiet crying. Ugly, gasping, can't catch your breath crying. Bree, slow down. What happened? Nelson, she choked out, I just found out from Aunt Renee, Mom and Dad took out a loan. A second mortgage, basically. On top of the settlement. They put in $80,000 and when Tyler's family backed out of their half. I went completely still. Tyler's family backed out. His parents said the budget was irresponsible. They're contributing $20,000, not $90,000. So Mom and Dad scrambled. Nelson, they put in $160,000 total. They maxed out a home equity line. The house is leveraged. The house I grew up in. Leveraged. For a wedding. Does Deja know? I asked. That's the thing. Brianna's voice dropped. Deja knows. She's known for 3 weeks. She told Mom and Dad not to tell anyone because she didn't want the wedding energy disrupted. I sat down on my couch. My back, freshly healing, didn't even register. Deja knew they were risking the family home. She knew they'd already denied me medical care. And she said nothing. Did nothing. Requested nothing be adjusted. The wedding was in 6 weeks. And I had a decision to make that had nothing to do with showing up in a tuxedo. I called Grandma Estelle immediately. She already knew. Estelle, I said, did you know about the equity loan? I found out yesterday, she said quietly. Nelson, your parents need to hear from someone they won't dismiss. And that's not me anymore. They tune me out. She paused. It might have to be you. I requested a family meeting. All of them, Mom, Dad, Deja, Brianna. I sent the text to the group chat, direct and calm, we need to sit down together. It's important and it can't wait. Dad responded first, Sunday work? I said yes. I spent that week preparing, not for a fight. For a reckoning. I printed the home equity loan documentation Brianna forwarded me, with account numbers redacted. I printed my surgical bills alongside my original request for help. I printed the timeline, dates, conversations, amounts. And I wrote a letter. 3 pages. Not accusatory. Honest. The kind of honest that cost something. Sunday came. I arrived at my parents' house, the house that was now partially owned by a bank because of a wedding, and sat down at the same table where my father had called my surgery temporary. I placed the letter face down on the table. Deja arrived last, 20 minutes late, still somehow unbothered. Tyler wasn't with her. She sat down, looked around, and said, "What is this?" "This," I said, "is a conversation we should have had a long time ago." I turned the letter over and slid it to the center of the table. I'd asked everyone to read it before anyone spoke. The room was silent for 6 minutes. 6 full minutes of my family reading words I'd spent 5 days choosing with surgical precision. When Mom finished, she covered her mouth with her hand. When Dad finished, he set the paper down and looked at the wall. When Deja finished, she looked at me. And for the first time in this entire story, her face cracked. Not into tears. Into something worse. Recognition. She knew every word I'd written was true. The letter said this, and I want you to hear it exactly as I wrote it. I'm not here to make anyone feel guilty. Guilt is temporary. I am here because I love this family enough to tell the truth before it becomes a wreck none of us can recover from. I asked for $5,000 to protect my ability to walk without pain. I was told there was nothing available. 3 weeks later, I learned you'd committed $80,000 to a wedding. I don't say this to diminish Deja's happiness. I say it because that moment told me clearly what I needed to know. I am not valued here the same way. That's not a feeling. That's a pattern. And I am done pretending I don't see it. After 6 minutes of silence, I spoke directly to Deja. I don't hate you, I said. But I need you to understand what your silence cost me. Deja's mouth opened, then closed. Then she said, quietly, nothing like her usual voice, I didn't think they'd actually say no to you. But when you found out they did, you said nothing. She didn't deny it. That silence was its own confession. My mother said, Nelson, I am so sorry. And I believed her. I think she meant it. But sorry without change is just sound. My father, Raymond Morrow, who called my surgery temporary, took the longest. He stared at the letter, at the table. Then finally, slowly, he said, I made a mistake, son. A real one. The room exhaled. But I wasn't finished. Dad, I said, you and Mom need to talk to a financial advisor. Before the wedding. Because the house being leveraged, that's not a Deja problem or a Nelson problem. That's a family emergency. Brianna nodded. And Grandma Estelle, who I'd asked to sit quietly in the corner, finally spoke. Raymond, listen to your son. The wedding happened. I know that might surprise you. But here's what you need to understand. I didn't attend to give my blessing to what had happened. I attended because Grandma Estelle asked me to, because Brianna needed me there, and because I had said everything that needed saying and I was done carrying the weight of their choices. The venue was beautiful. I'll give Deja that. The chandeliers were exactly as stunning as the photos on her phone. Tyler cried when he saw her walking down the aisle, and whatever else was true about this story, that moment was real. I sat with Grandma Estelle and Brianna. I was not in the wedding party. I had told Deja, gently but firmly, that I couldn't stand up there with her. Not after everything. She was hurt. But she didn't argue. I think some part of her understood she wasn't owed that. My parents looked tired. The kind of tired that has nothing to do with the day's events. The kind that comes from finally seeing clearly what a decision cost you. 3 weeks after the wedding, my father hired a financial advisor, a woman named Patricia Osei, who Brianna's boyfriend recommended. I know this because Brianna told me. I know because Dad called me himself. Nelson, he said, I need you to know something. Okay. You were right. About all of it. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about why I made the choices I made. He paused. I don't have a good answer. But I don't want to lose you over it. I held the phone. My back, almost fully healed, didn't ache. I don't want to be lost, Dad, I said. But things have to be different. I know. That was the beginning of something. Not forgiveness yet. Not completely. But the beginning. It's been 8 months since surgery. My back is strong. Dr. Holt cleared me for full activity in month 4. I've been going to the gym with Darius 3 times a week. My body feels like mine again, something I genuinely didn't know if I'd be able to say. My relationship with my parents is different now. Honest in a way it never was before. My father and I talk more than we ever did, real conversations, not performances. My mother still gravitates toward Deja out of old habit. But I stopped needing her not to. I stopped needing them to be different people than they are. I just needed to be clear about who I am and what I will and won't accept. Deja and I are not close. Maybe we won't be. She reached out 2 months after the wedding with a long message, apologetic, some of it genuine. I responded. Briefly. The door isn't locked. But I'm not rushing to open it either. Grandma Estelle checks on me every Sunday. That hasn't changed. That will never change. And Darius is my brother. Full stop. Blood doesn't make family. Showing up makes family. Here is what I want you to take from this. Being quiet doesn't mean you're fine. Being reasonable doesn't mean you're weak. And choosing yourself, clearly, without cruelty, without burning everything down, is not betrayal. It is survival. My parents made their choice crystal clear. And so did I. If you've ever been the one your family treated as second place, the one who had to figure it out alone while watching others be carried, you already know exactly what this felt like. And you already know what it means to finally choose yourself.